When people think of Macau, they usually think of one thing: casinos. But this tiny region is also home to one of the highest concentrations of Michelin-starred restaurants in the world. Today we're visiting one of the two restaurants in Macau with 3 Michelin stars, Robuchon and Dôme. Hi guys, I'm Anya. If you're new here, I travel around the world sharing food experiences from Michelin-starred restaurants and fine dining destinations to local hidden gems. Today we're in Macau, a tiny region on China's southern coast, just an hour from Hong Kong. Even though it's only about 33 square kilometers, roughly half the size of Manhattan, it's home to over 700,000 people, luxury resorts, and the world's third highest concentration of Michelin-starred restaurants. Macau was under Portuguese rule for more than 400 years before it was handed back to China in 1999. You can still see some Portuguese influence today. These days though, Macau is known for something completely different: casinos. It's the world's biggest gambling destination, with casinos generating even more revenue than Las Vegas. In many ways, it feels a lot like Vegas, with enormous casino resorts and even many of the same hotel brands, including Wynn, MGM, and the Venetian. But today we're leaving the casino floors behind and heading to one of Macau's most famous restaurants. Robuchon Dôme is located at the very top of the iconic Grand Lisboa Hotel, one of Macau's most recognizable landmarks. The restaurant is named after legendary French chef Joël Robuchon, who earned more Michelin stars than any other chef in the world during his lifetime and helped redefine modern French fine dining. Although Chef Robuchon sadly passed away in 2018, his legacy continues through his restaurants around the world. Today, the kitchen in Macau is led by executive chef Julien Tangourian, who worked alongside Joël Robuchon for many years and continues to uphold the same philosophy and standards. Robuchon Dôme was first awarded 3 Michelin stars in 2009 and has retained them every year since. That's 18 consecutive years with 3 Michelin stars, making it one of Asia's most celebrated French restaurants. Getting to the restaurant is an experience in itself. After entering the Grand Lisboa Hotel, we took the elevator to the 39th floor, where we were welcomed by a hostess. From there, we were escorted to a private elevator exclusive for the restaurant's guests, which takes you to the restaurant on the 43rd floor. The moment the elevator doors opened, the first thing that caught my eye was the golden Steinway grand piano right in the middle of the dining room, with a pianist playing live. Right above the piano was a chandelier made from 131,500 Swarovski crystals. It's honestly the most beautiful restaurant entrances I've ever experienced. The whole restaurant is surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Macau, and with all the city lights outside, the view was incredible. Despite being one of Macau's most famous restaurants, the main dining room doesn't have many tables, so there's plenty of space between them. Every table is beautifully set, and no matter where you look, there's another detail that catches your eye. The restaurant also has 2 private dining rooms, perfect for smaller groups. One of the first things that happened after we sat down was a champagne trolley being brought over to the table. There were plenty of incredible bottles to choose from, but instead of deciding straight away, we asked to have a look at the wine list first. Robuchon Dôme is known for having one of Asia's most impressive wine collections, with thousands of bottles from some of the world's best wine regions. Rather than offering a fixed wine pairing, the sommelier helped you choose wines that best suit your menu. After looking through the wine list, we chose a bottle of Dôme Perignon Vintage 1990 for the earlier courses, while the sommelier recommended red wine for the richer dishes. It ended up being an excellent choice. Next came the menus. There are 2 tasting menus to choose from: the signature menu and the seasonal menu. It actually took us quite a while to decide between them, but in the end we went for the seasonal menu because there were several dishes there that we really wanted to try. That said, there were also a couple of dishes from the signature menu that we didn't want to miss. We asked if it could be possible to replace the salmon course with king crab and caviar dish, and they didn't hesitate for a second. We also asked if we could add the cheese trolley from the signature menu to our dinner, and again, it was no problem at all. The fact that they were so flexible made the whole experience feel very personal. Then came the second trolley. This time, it was the butter trolley with both salted and unsalted butter for us to choose from before the bread was served. A few moments later, our bottle of Dôme Perignon Vintage 1990 arrived, followed by the bread trolley.
We have Italian bread called focaccia with some running tomato on it, and that's the baguette, big baguette, a regular baguette. We offer mini baguettes as well, bacon and plain mini baguettes. We do have a mini croissant, Comte cheese bread. On the back line, we have a classic sourdough, that's a brioche. In the other side, we have a dry rye.
There were so many different breads to choose from that it almost felt like a course in itself. Needless to say, it took quite a bit of self-control not to fill up before the tasting menu had even started. The first bite of the evening looked almost like a dessert. A strawberry gazpacho topped with frozen ricotta cheese and pistachio. The flavors completely surprised me. At first it tasted just like tomato gazpacho with just a hint of strawberry. Then that subtle sweetness from the strawberries started coming through, and the balance was incredible. Honestly, what a way to start. For the next course, we swapped the salmon dish for the restaurant's signature king crab and caviar course. Since we're from Norway and have grown up eating plenty of salmon, we thought this was a much more unique choice. And I'm so glad we did. It was a very delicate dish, but in the best possible way. The sweetness of the king crab really came through, and there was a perfect harmony between the king crab, the lobster jelly, and the caviar. Even though the flavors were quite subtle, everything was beautifully balanced and you could clearly taste every single ingredient. Next came the white asparagus with sea urchin. The asparagus was absolutely perfect. It still had this incredible crunch, and the balance of the whole dish was spot on. The sea urchin played more of a supporting role, letting the asparagus remain the star of the dish. But what really made it was the garlic sauce. It was so good that we actually asked for some extra so that we could dip our bread in it. Then the sommelier brought over a red wine, a 2013 Occidental Kistler Pinot Noir from Sonoma Coast. Our next course was ravioli filled with 36-month Comte cheese served with morel mushrooms and a rich Parmesan sauce. At first we cut the ravioli in half before taking a bite, but then one of the servers came over and told us it was much better eaten whole. The moment I did, I understood why. The ravioli burst in my mouth and the 36-month Comte cheese just oozed out. Together with the rich Parmesan sauce, it was complete cheese overload. But somehow it wasn't too much. Everything was perfectly balanced. The pasta was perfectly al dente, the morel mushrooms were incredible, and the sauce was absolutely delicious. The next course was lobster served with lobster bisque and peas. The lobster was lobster. It was excellent, perfectly cooked. The lobster bisque was also really good. It tasted like a classic lobster bisque, and despite the menu describing it as spicy, I honestly didn't find it spicy at all. What really surprised me though were the peas. I know that probably sounds ridiculous, but they were unbelievably sweet, incredibly crisp, and honestly some of the best peas I've ever had. The next course was cod. It was served with artichoke puree, carrot eggs, black garlic ash, and bacon alongside the fish, while the cod itself was glazed with miso and sake. The whole dish was finished with a rich sauce made with oyster, Malabar pepper, and lobster. The cod was beautifully cooked, delicate and flaky, and the sauce worked beautifully with the fish. For the final savory course, we were served roasted pigeon with foie gras. The main part of the dish consisted of 3 beautifully presented pieces combining pigeon and foie gras, finished with a rich pigeon jus. On the side were the pigeon legs served on top of a fresh salad. Alongside the dish, we were also served a clear chicken consommé as well as Joël Robuchon's famous mashed potatoes. The potatoes were unbelievably smooth, rich, and incredibly buttery, with an almost silky texture that just melted in your mouth. The pigeon was incredibly tender, while the foie gras added an amazing richness that worked beautifully with the meat. I think this ended up being my favorite dish of the evening. By this point, I was genuinely full, but dinner was far from over. Next came the cheese trolley. There was an incredible selection to choose from. The only cheese I specifically asked for was the Apoise, and the rest of the selection was chosen for me.
From this one here, going to goat cheese, Apoise, and
Okay, so like this?
like this, instead of like this, like a zigzag.
It was served with muscat grapes from Peru, dried fruits, some nuts, crackers, and more bread. For the cheeses, I went for a glass of Ruinart. Dessert began with one of the restaurant's signature desserts, a crêpe soufflé flavored with lime served with cottage cheese sorbet. It looked like it was going to be quite heavy, but it was surprisingly light and refreshing. Then the restaurant surprised us with a special anniversary dessert, which was such a lovely personal touch. It was a beautifully made Napoleonian pastry with perfectly crisp layers and an incredibly light cream. It was so good, but by this point I was so full that I honestly thought I was going to explode. Then came the dessert trolley. It looked amazing, but there was absolutely no chance I could fit in another dessert. I was still working on my Napoleon pastry. And just when I thought it was the end, they brought over the sorbet trolley. I couldn't resist trying one tiny mango sorbet. I honestly thought that had to be the end now, but then another trolley arrived. This time, it was a Petit Fours. There was no way I was eating another dessert, but I couldn't leave without trying one of the raspberry macarons. Somehow, I still managed to find room for that one. It was absolutely worth it. One thing is for sure, if anyone tells you that you leave fine dining restaurants hungry, they definitely haven't been to Robuchon or Dôme. The service throughout the evening was exceptional. What impressed me most wasn't just how professional everyone was, but how personal they made the whole experience feel. Nothing was ever a problem for them. They happily customized the menu for us, answered every question we had, and explained each dish in incredible detail. One thing I really appreciated was how naturally they adapted to us. We like to relax, enjoy our wine, and have fun, and they picked up on that straight away. They joked with us, matched our energy, and found the perfect balance between being professional and making the evening feel relaxed. That's not something you always find in fine dining. The sommelier was equally impressive. Since the restaurant doesn't offer a fixed wine pairing, he took the time to understand what we enjoyed before recommending wines he thought would work best with the menu. Also, we had one of the last dinner reservations of the evening and ended up being the last guests to leave the restaurants. Still, we never felt rushed and we were able to enjoy everything at our own pace. Overall, Robuchon or Dôme delivered one of the most memorable fine dining experiences I've ever had. Of course, the food was outstanding, but what impressed me just as much was how complete the whole experience felt. One of my favorite parts of the entire experience was all the different trolleys. They added so much to the experience and made the whole dinner experience even more special. I also really liked that the menu focused on classic French cuisine. The dishes weren't about unusual flavor combinations or trying to surprise you. Instead, they took classic French cooking and elevated it through beautiful presentation and incredible attention to detail. If you're visiting Macau and looking for an unforgettable fine dining experience, I wouldn't hesitate to recommend Robuchon or Dôme. And with that, we reach the end of today's episode. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like and subscribe. There is plenty more food, travel, and other content coming very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.